The Galactic Assembly Station floated in the darkness of neutral space like a massive metal flower. Its arms stretched outward for miles, each one holding docking bays large enough to swallow entire fleets. For 10,000 years, this station had served as the meeting place for the rulers of the known galaxy. Today, it would witness a moment that would change everything. Admiral Catherine Cole stood at the viewport of her shuttle, watching the station grow larger as they approached. She was a tall woman in her 50s, with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Beside her stood Ambassador Daniel Wright, a thin man with a calm face and patient eyes. He had spent 30 years building bridges between species, would never learn to trust each other. Catherine turned to him. "You know this is a trap?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I know, but we have to try. Earth needs to see that we did everything possible to avoid war." The shuttle docked with a soft thump. When the doors opened, they found a corridor lined with armed guards. The soldiers were Kethrani, tall, insect-like creatures with hard shells and too many limbs. Their weapons hummed with barely contained energy. "A warm welcome," Catherine muttered. They walked through endless hallways until they reached the Grand Council chamber. It was a circular room built to hold thousands. Today, representatives from 17 species filled the seats, all of them staring down at the small human delegation. At the center of the highest platform sat High Chancellor Vorthax. He was the largest Kethrani Catherine had ever seen, his shell decorated with gold and precious stones that marked his rank. His compound eyes reflected the light like black mirrors. "Humans," Vorthax said, his voice clicking through a translator device. "You stand before the assembled might of the Galactic Confederation. You would be wise to remember your place." Daniel stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "High Chancellor, we thank you for this opportunity to speak. Earth wishes only for peaceful relations with all members of the Confederation." Vorthax made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace, is that what you call your endless expansion? Your colonies spread across the Orion Rim like a disease. Your ships probe our borders. Your scientists unlock secrets that took our greatest minds thousands of years to discover." A murmur ran through the chamber. Representatives from other species clicked, hissed, and growled their agreement. "We have expanded only into unclaimed space," Daniel said calmly. "We have violated no treaties. We have attacked no one. Your very existence is an attack," Vorthax replied. He leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the human delegation. 200 years ago, your species could barely leave its own planet. Now you challenge races that ruled the stars before your ancestors climbed down from trees. This cannot be allowed to continue." He raised one of his clawed limbs, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of human space, with 12 colony worlds highlighted in red. "Here are our terms," Vorthax announced. "You will surrender these 12 worlds to Confederation control. You will reduce your military fleet by 60%. All human scientific research will be supervised by Confederation observers. In return, humanity will be granted junior membership in our great union, with limited voting rights and restricted travel privileges." Catherine felt her hands curl into fists. She forced herself to stay calm. Daniel's expression did not change. "And if we refuse these terms?" Vorthax spread his limbs wide, a gesture that somehow managed to look both threatening and amused. "Then the Confederation will be forced to protect itself from your aggression. We have 4,000 warships ready to move at my command. Your entire species could be contained within a single month." The chamber filled with sounds of approval. Catherine looked around at the assembled aliens. She saw hunger in their eyes, not for war, but for what humanity had built. They wanted Earth's technology, Earth's resources, Earth's future. The peace talks were just a pretty cover for robbery. "We request time to consult with our government," Daniel said. Vorthax tilted his head. "You have 18 hours. Use them wisely." The human delegation was escorted to small quarters on the far side of the station. The rooms were cold and the furniture was designed for bodies very different from human ones. Catherine suspected this was deliberate. As soon as they were alone, she activated a secure communication channel to Earth. The face of General Marcus Perry appeared on the screen. He was an older man with white hair and a face carved from stone. "I watched the whole thing," Marcus said. "Those terms are impossible. They know we can't accept them." "They don't want us to accept," Catherine replied. "They want an excuse for war." Daniel sat down heavily. "What has intelligence discovered?" "There must be a reason they're pushing so hard now," Marcus nodded grimly. "We found it. 6 months ago, our research teams achieved a breakthrough in fold space technology. We thought we kept it secret, but the Confederation has spies everywhere. They know what we're building." "Fold space drives," Catherine said quietly. "Ships that can travel anywhere instantly, without using the gates they control." "Exactly. Right now, the Confederation controls all interstellar travel through their gate network. Every ship that wants to travel between stars has to use their gates and pay their fees. If we perfect fold space technology, that monopoly ends forever." Daniel understood now. This isn't about our colonies or our fleet size. They're afraid of what we'll become. They're afraid of losing control, Marcus agreed. The elder races have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years by keeping everyone else dependent on them. Humanity threatens that entire system just by existing. Catherine stared at the map of human space displayed on her tablet. 12 colony worlds, each one home to millions of people who had built new lives among the stars. Families, children, dreams. The Confederation wanted to take all of it. "What are our options?" she asked. Marcus leaned closer to the camera. "We've been preparing for this possibility since first contact. Project Omega is ready. But once we start down that road, there's no turning back." "Can we win?" Daniel asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "We can survive, and sometimes that's enough to change everything." Catherine looked at Daniel. They had known each other for 20 years, through wars and peace and everything in between. She could see the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "Came here to find peace," Daniel said softly. "Real peace between equals. That's still what I want." "Then we give them one more chance," Catherine replied. "We go back into that chamber and we try one more time to make them see reason. But if they refuse, if they insist on treating us as slaves instead of partners, then we walk away. And we show them exactly what humanity can do when we stop being polite." Daniel nodded slowly. "One more chance." Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, 2,000 human warships waited in the darkness. Hidden in places the Confederation had never thought to look. They had been building in secret for 50 years, preparing for a day they hoped would never come. That day had arrived. The 18 hours passed like water through fingers. Catherine Cole slept for 3 of them, her military training allowing her to rest even when her mind screamed with worry. Daniel Wright did not sleep at all. He spent the night writing, crossing out, and rewriting the speech he would give to the council. When morning came, they walked back to the Grand Council chamber. The corridors were even more crowded with guards than before. Catherine counted at least 200 armed soldiers, all of them watching the humans with hungry eyes. "They're trying to frighten us," Daniel said quietly. "It's working," Catherine admitted. "But fear and surrender are 2 different things." The chamber doors opened, and they stepped inside. The room was packed with even more representatives than yesterday. Word had spread across the station, and everyone wanted to witness what would happen next. The air itself seemed thick with anticipation. High Chancellor Vorthax sat on his elevated platform, his compound eyes tracking the humans as they walked to the center of the chamber. Around him sat representatives from the most powerful species in the Confederation. The reptilian Scarith, with their scaled faces and cold eyes, the aquatic Diluvians floating in their water-filled suits, the ethereal Varen who seemed made of light and shadow. "You have returned," Vorthax said. "We assumed you might try to flee in the night." Catherine kept her face blank, though rage burned in her chest. "Earth does not flee," Daniel replied calmly. "We came to negotiate in good faith, and we remain committed to finding a peaceful solution." Vorthax made that clicking sound again. "Then you accept our terms?" "We would like to discuss modifications to the agreement. Perhaps a graduated timeline for fleet reduction, or shared oversight of research facilities, rather than complete Confederation control. We believe there is room for compromise that serves both parties. Scarith representative rose from his seat. His name was Admiral Zethrix, and he commanded the largest fleet in the Confederation. His scales were deep green, almost black, and scars covered half his face. Compromise? Zethrix hissed. The prey does not negotiate with the hunter. You will accept what you are given, and be grateful we allow your species to continue existing. Sounds of agreement filled the chamber. Catherine watched Daniel carefully. She could see the muscles in his jaw tightening, but his voice remained steady. We are not prey, Daniel said, and we are not asking for charity. Earth has much to offer the Confederation. Our medical technology has cured diseases that plagued your worlds for centuries. Our agricultural innovations could feed billions who now go hungry. We want to be partners, not subjects. Vorthax rose slowly from his seat. He was massive, nearly 3 times the height of a human, and his shell gleamed under the lights. Your offers mean nothing. We do not need your gifts. What we need is for your species to learn its place in the natural order of the galaxy. He paused, his eyes fixed on Daniel. We have decided that the original terms were too generous. New conditions will be added. A holographic display appeared, showing dense text in a dozen languages. In addition to the previous requirements, all human genetic information will be registered with Confederation medical authorities. Population growth will be monitored and limited to prevent further uncontrolled expansion. Humans will be restricted to their current territory permanently. Any attempt to develop fold space technology will be considered an act of war. Catherine felt her heart stop. They were not just asking for surrender. They were asking for the slow death of humanity, a prison disguised as peace. Daniel stared at the display for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was very quiet. Chancellor, may I address the council? Vorthax waved a limb dismissively. Speak if you wish. It changes nothing. Daniel walked to the center of the chamber. He looked up at the assembled representatives, these beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, who saw humanity as nothing more than an inconvenient pest to be controlled. I have spent my entire adult life building bridges, Daniel began. I learned 17 languages so I could speak directly to other species without translators. I studied your histories, your cultures, your religions. I did this because I believed that understanding could overcome fear, and that peace was always possible between beings of goodwill. He paused, his eyes moving across the chamber. When humanity first reached the stars, we were filled with wonder. We thought the galaxy would be a place of cooperation and shared discovery. We dreamed of joining a community of civilizations, each one contributing its unique gifts to the greater whole. His voice grew stronger. Instead, we found this, a collection of empires built on domination and fear. Elder races who crush anyone who might one day challenge their power. Species who speak of peace while sharpening their knives. Vorthax shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador, you would be wise to choose your next words carefully. Daniel reached into his pocket and removed his diplomatic credentials. They were small silver discs that identified him as an official representative of Earth. He had carried them for 30 years. He placed them on the table and stepped back. Humanity rejects your terms. All of them. The chamber exploded with noise. Representatives shouted and screamed in a dozen languages. Guards stepped forward, weapons raised. Daniel did not move. We reject your conditions because they are not peace. They are slavery with a pleasant name. We reject them because accepting them would mean the end of everything humanity is, and everything we might become. Vorthax's voice cut through the chaos. You understand what you are doing? You are declaring war on the entire galaxy. Catherine Cole stepped forward to stand beside Daniel. She faced Vorthax directly, her shoulders straight and her eyes unafraid. We are not declaring anything, she said. We are simply refusing to accept chains. If you choose to attack us for that refusal, the war will be your choice, not ours. You cannot win, Admiral Zethrix hissed. We have 4,000 ships. You have a few hundred? The mathematics are simple. Catherine allowed herself a small smile. Mathematics can be surprising sometimes. She looked at Daniel, and he nodded slightly. "Remember this moment?" Catherine said to the chamber. "Remember that we came here seeking friendship. Remember that we offered partnership and trade and cooperation. Remember that you were the ones who demanded submission instead. And remember," Daniel added softly, "that we warned you." They turned and walked toward the door. The guards moved to block them, but Vorthax raised a limb. "Let them go. They will learn soon enough what their arrogance has cost them." Catherine and Daniel walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind them with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. In the corridor, Daniel's hands were shaking. Catherine put a hand on his shoulder. "You did everything you could," she said. "It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. They didn't want peace. They wanted submission." Daniel looked at her with tired eyes. "What happens now?" Catherine's expression hardened. "Now we show them who they decided to fight." They walked to their shuttle in silence. Behind them, the Galactic Assembly Station was already buzzing with activity. Messages flew across the stars. Fleet commanders received their orders. The largest military operation in 3 centuries was about to begin. The Confederation was confident. They had numbers on their side and 10,000 years of dominance. They had crushed rebellions before. This would be no different. They could not have been more wrong. The news spread across the Confederation like fire through dry grass. Humanity had rejected the Council's generous offer. The primitive newcomers had dared to walk out of negotiations. War was now inevitable. High Chancellor Vorthax addressed the Council within hours of the human delegation's departure. His voice rang with confidence and barely hidden excitement. "For too long, we have tolerated humanity's arrogance. We watched them spread across the stars like vermin, always hoping they would learn their place. That hope is now finished. The time has come to remind the galaxy why the elder races rule." The Council voted unanimously for military action. Representatives who had quietly questioned the harsh terms now competed to show their enthusiasm for the coming war. No one wanted to be seen as weak or sympathetic to the humans. Admiral Zethrix of the Scarith. Empire was given command of the combined fleet. He accepted the honor with a cold smile that showed rows of sharp teeth. "We will crush them quickly," he promised. "Within 6 months, humans will be contained in a handful of controlled worlds, their ships destroyed, their dreams of equality forgotten forever." The Armada assembled at the edge of Confederation space. 4,000 warships from 12 different species gathered in formations that stretched across millions of miles. Battlecruisers the size of small moons floated beside swift attack frigates. Carrier ships held thousands of fighter craft ready for launch. Supply vessels carried enough weapons and fuel to sustain operations for years. Zethrix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest warship ever built. Armed with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand nuclear fire. He looked out at his fleet and felt nothing but contempt for the enemy they were about to face. "Human intelligence estimates," his aide reported. "They have approximately 300 combat-capable vessels. Most are smaller than our frigates." Zethrix laughed. 300 against 4,000. They will not last a week. The fleet moved through the Arcturus Gate and entered human space. On Earth, General Marcus Perry watched the invasion force appear on his screens. His face showed no emotion, but his heart was pounding. "They came through faster than expected," Catherine Cole said. She had returned from the station just hours before the fleet arrived. "Zethrix is overconfident. He wants a quick victory to increase his political standing." Marcus turned to his staff. "Initiate Protocol Omega. All phases." Across human space, plans that had been decades in the making began to unfold. Colony worlds received evacuation orders through secure channels. Civilians disappeared into underground shelters that had been secretly constructed over generations. Orbital stations went dark, their power signatures vanishing from sensors. The Confederation fleet found only ghosts. "Admiral." Zethrix stared at the empty space where human colonies should have been. His scouts reported abandoned stations, silent worlds, and space that seemed completely deserted. "Where are they?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. There are no human ships within sensor range. The colonies appear to have been evacuated." A Diluvian captain named Thesra spoke up. "Admiral, this troubles me. We expected resistance. This emptiness feels wrong." Zethryx turned his cold eyes on her. "Wrong? It is evidence of human cowardice. They know they cannot fight us, so they run and hide like the prey animals they are. But prey animals also set traps." Zethryx dismissed her concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. "Your caution is noted and ignored. We will advance to the inner systems. Wherever the humans are hiding, we will find them." The fleet moved deeper into human space. Days passed, then weeks. They encountered nothing. No ships, no resistance, no sign of human activity at all. The silence was complete. Some captains began to grow nervous. They reported strange sensor readings, shadows that appeared and disappeared at the edge of detection. But Zethryx dismissed every report as equipment malfunctions or the fevered imagination of cowards. On the 23rd day, the fleet reached the Arcturus Reach, a region of space midway between the outer colonies and Earth's home system. Zethryx planned to establish a forward base here before the final push. "All ships, prepare for orbital formation around the second planet," he ordered. The fleet began to reorganize. 4,000 ships moved slowly into their assigned positions. Their captains focused on navigation rather than combat readiness. That was when the lights went out. Every screen on the Eternal Dominion went dark. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in red shadows. "Port," Zethryx shouted. "Navigation offline, Admiral." "Sensors offline. Communications offline. We have lost contact with the fleet." Similar scenes played out across every ship in the Confederation Armada. Main computers crashed simultaneously. Backup systems failed to respond. Ships drifted blind and deaf in the darkness of space. For 17 minutes, 4,000 warships were helpless. When power finally returned, the tactical display showed something that made Zethryx's blood run cold. The Confederation fleet was surrounded. Human ships filled the space around them. Not 300 vessels, as intelligence had claimed, but over 2,000. They had appeared from nowhere, emerging from the empty darkness like predators rising from deep water. Admiral Zethryx stared at the screen. "That is impossible. Where did they come from? Our scouts would have seen them approach." "Admiral," his sensor officer said, his voice trembling, "they did not approach. They simply appeared. One moment the space was empty, the next it was full of enemy ships. Fold space technology? The humans had perfected it. They could move their ships anywhere in the galaxy without using the gates, without any warning at all. A communication signal cut through the chaos. Every screen in the Confederation fleet displayed the same image. Admiral Catherine Cole, standing on the bridge of a human warship. "Admiral Zethryx," she said. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. "I hope your trip was pleasant. We've been waiting for you." Zethryx found his voice. "You think surrounding us means anything? We still outnumber you 2-1. Your technological tricks will not save you from simple mathematics." Catherine smiled. "You're right. Numbers matter. Let me show you what else matters." She nodded to someone off-screen. Every human ship opened fire simultaneously. The Battle of Arcturus Reach had begun. Confederation shields flared under the assault. But something was wrong. Human weapons were cutting through defensive barriers that should have held for hours. Ships that had weathered dozens of battles began taking critical damage within seconds. "Turn fire," Zethryx screamed. All ships returned fire. But the human vessels moved with impossible coordination, dancing around Confederation formations like they knew every move before it happened. They struck weak points with surgical precision, then vanished before counterattacks could land. Zethryx watched in horror as his beautiful fleet began to die. "Retreat to the gate," he ordered. "All ships, emergency withdrawal." But when his surviving navigation officers plotted a course to the Arcturus gate, they discovered it was already under human control. There was no escape. Captain Thisraz's voice came over the emergency channel. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Zethryx had no answer. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The humans were not prey. They had never been prey. They had been waiting. The battle lasted 11 hours. It felt like 11 years. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge of the Resolute, Earth's newest and most powerful warship. Around her, officers worked with quiet efficiency, their voices calm despite the chaos unfolding on their screens. Years of training and preparation had made them ready for this moment. Enemy formation breaking apart in Sector 7, her tactical officer reported. Scarith heavy cruisers are attempting to regroup around their flagship. Catherine studied the display. The Confederation fleet was in chaos, their formations shattered, their communications disrupted. Ships that had never faced serious opposition were learning what it meant to fight an enemy who refused to be conquered. Focus fire on their command vessels, Catherine ordered. Once they lose coordination, the smaller ships will surrender. Human warships moved like a single organism. They had trained together for decades, developing tactics that no enemy had ever seen. Their weapons used technology that the Confederation had dismissed as impossible. Energy beams that bypassed traditional shields and targeted critical systems with devastating accuracy. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zethrix watched his fleet dying. Ships that should have been invincible were breaking apart under human fire. His communications officer shouted numbers that grew worse by the minute. "We have lost 300 vessels, Admiral. 400. The Diluvian squadron has been completely destroyed." Zethrix pounded his clawed fist on his command chair. "How is this possible? How can they be defeating us?" His aide had no answer. No one did. A human strike force appeared from fold space directly behind the Eternal Dominion. They had somehow calculated exactly where the flagship would be and emerged within weapons range. Evasive action. Zethrix screamed, but his ship was too large, too slow. The human vessels fired concentrated particle beams that cut through the Dominion's shields like paper. The first beam destroyed the main engines. The second pierced the reactor core. Admiral Zethrix had time for one final thought before the explosion took him. He realized too late that the humans had never been afraid. They had simply been patient. The Eternal Dominion broke apart in a flash of light. Visible across the entire battlefield, with Zethrix's dead command fell to Captain Thezra. The Diluvian had survived the destruction of her squadron by pure luck. Her ship damaged, but still functional. She looked at the tactical display and saw only one possible choice. "All Confederation vessels," she broadcast on every available frequency. "This is Captain Thezra assuming command. We cannot win this battle. I am signaling surrender to the human fleet. Dot 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 dot. They screamed about honor and revenge and never giving up. But most had seen enough. Their ships were damaged, their crews terrified, and their confidence shattered. One by one, they lowered their weapons and raised signals of surrender. Catherine Cole watched the Confederation fleet go silent. She felt no joy, only a deep weariness. "Accept their surrender," she ordered. "Medical ships to assist with wounded. No unnecessary casualties." The human fleet moved efficiently to secure the surviving enemy vessels. Despite everything the Confederation had planned for them, the humans showed mercy. Wounded aliens were treated alongside wounded humans. Damaged ships were stabilized rather than destroyed. Captain Thesra was brought aboard the Resolute under guard. She stood before Catherine Cole, her aquatic form trembling slightly in the suit that kept her alive outside water. "You could have killed us all," Thesra said. "Why didn't you?" Catherine studied the alien captain. "Because we're not like you. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in it as equals. Council will never accept that, and we'll have to convince them otherwise. Your surviving ships will return to Confederation space. They will carry a message. Earth is willing to talk, but we will never accept the terms you offered before. If you attack us again, the result will be the same. The Sra was silent for a long moment. The High Chancellor will be furious. I'm counting on it. Fury makes people stupid. And right now, the Confederation needs to start being smart. 3 days later, the surrendered fleet limped back through the Arcturus Gate. They brought with them recordings of the battle. Undeniable evidence of humanity's true capabilities. On the Galactic Assembly Station, High Chancellor Vorthax received Captain Theusra's report in stunned silence. The images showed everything. The human ships appearing from nowhere. The weapons that bypassed Confederation shields. The systematic destruction of the most powerful military force in galactic history. This cannot be accurate, Vorthax said. His voice sounded hollow. These must be fabrications. They're real, High Chancellor. I witnessed it myself. The humans defeated us completely. They could have destroyed every ship, killed every soldier. Instead, they let us go. Vorthax's compound eyes reflected fear he could no longer hide. What do they want? They say they want to talk. Real negotiations between equals? Equals? Vorthax repeated the word as if it tasted strange. They expect us to treat them as equals after this humiliation. With respect, High Chancellor, they have earned that right. They showed us mercy when they could have shown us extinction. Perhaps we should consider what that means. Vorthax dismissed her with a wave of his limb, but her words stayed with him. He had ruled the Council for 40 years. He had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. He had never imagined that his reign might end like this, brought low by a species he had dismissed as primitive newcomers, 1 week after the battle. Ambassador Daniel Wright requested permission to address the Council. Vorthax considered refusing, but refusing would look like weakness, and he had shown too much weakness already. Let him come, Vorthax said. Let him say his words. Then we will decide what to do. Daniel arrived at the station with a small escort. No warships this time, just a diplomatic shuttle. The message was clear: humanity did not need military threats to make their point. He walked into the Grand Council chamber for the second time. The room that had once buzzed with confidence was now silent with fear. Representatives who had cheered for human destruction now avoided his eyes. Daniel stood in the center of the chamber and looked up at High Chancellor Vorthax. We have much to discuss, Daniel said. Vorthax stared down at him. The human looked exactly the same as he had weeks ago, calm and patient, and somehow completely unafraid. Speak then, Vorthax said. Tell us what terms you demand. Daniel shook his head. I am not here to demand anything. I am here to offer something better than demands. I am here to offer partnership. The chamber stirred. This was not what anyone expected. You have seen what humanity can do when we are forced to fight, Daniel continued. But destruction was never our goal. We built our weapons hoping we would never need to use them. We want peace, real peace, built on respect and cooperation rather than domination and fear. He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. The old way of doing things is finished. You can either adapt to a new galaxy, one where all species are treated as equals, or you can cling to the past and watch your confederation crumble. The choice belongs to you. Vorthax was silent for a long time. Around him, representatives whispered and muttered. Finally, the High Chancellor spoke. What exactly are you proposing? Daniel smiled. It was not a smile of victory, but of hope. I am proposing that we start over. No ultimatums. No threats. Just two civilizations sitting down together and finding a way forward that benefits everyone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his diplomatic credentials. The same silver discs he had placed on the table when he walked out of the first negotiation. I would like to resume my duties as ambassador. If you will accept me? The chamber held its breath. Vorthax looked at the small human standing before him. A month ago he had thought this creature beneath his notice. Now he understood that he had been the fool all along. "Very well," Vorthax said slowly. "Let us talk." The negotiations lasted 6 months. They were difficult, often frustrating, and sometimes seemed ready to collapse entirely. But this time, both sides came to the table, willing to actually listen. Ambassador Daniel Wright led the human delegation with the same patience he had always shown. Admiral Catherine Cole stood beside him, a reminder of what would happen if the talks failed. Together they represented everything humanity had become, strong enough to fight, wise enough to prefer peace. High Chancellor Vorthax proved more flexible than anyone expected. The battle at Arcturus Reach had broken something in him. Not his pride, but his certainty. For the first time in his long life, he questioned whether the old ways were truly the best ways. "We ruled through fear," he admitted to Daniel during a private meeting. "We told ourselves it was for the good of the galaxy, that without our firm hand, everything would fall into chaos. Now I wonder if we were simply afraid of change." "Fear of change is natural," Daniel replied. "The question is whether we let that fear control us, or find the courage to grow beyond it." The final treaty was signed on New Geneva, a human colony world that had been chosen specifically because it was neither Earth nor any Confederation capital. It was neutral ground, a place for new beginnings. Representatives from all 17 Confederation species gathered alongside human delegates. The document they signed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Humanity joined the Confederation, not as a junior member, but as a full partner, with equal voting rights. The old system of senior and junior species was abolished entirely. Every civilization, regardless of how long they had traveled the stars, would have an equal voice in galactic affairs. The exploitative trade agreements that had allowed elder races to drain wealth from younger ones were canceled. New rules guaranteed fair exchange, with oversight committees that included representatives from all members. Scientific knowledge would be shared freely. The days of hoarding technology to maintain power were over. If one species made a breakthrough, all species would benefit. And in return, humanity opened its own archives. Medical techniques that extended lifespans by decades were shared with worlds that had suffered from plagues for centuries. Agricultural innovations that could grow food in the harshest environments were given to colonies on the edge of starvation. Clean energy systems transformed struggling settlements into thriving cities. Catherine Cole watched the signing ceremony from the gallery. Beside her sat Captain Thesra, who had become an unlikely friend in the months since the battle. "I never thought I would see this day," Thesra said. "When I was young, I was taught that the natural order of the galaxy could never change. The strong ruled, the weak served. That was simply how things were." Catherine nodded. "We were taught that too, back on Earth. But we also learned that the strong have a choice about how they use their strength. Your people chose mercy, even when you had every reason to destroy us." "We chose hope," Catherine corrected. "Destruction would have felt satisfying for about 5 minutes. Building something better will last forever." Below them, High Chancellor Vorthax rose to address the assembly. He moved more slowly than he had before, as if the weight of his years had finally caught up with him. "I have ruled this council for 40 years, he began. "In that time, I believed I was protecting our civilization from threats both internal and external. I see now that the greatest threat was our own inability to adapt." He paused, his compound eyes sweeping across the gathered representatives. "We looked at humanity and saw danger. We saw a species that advanced too quickly, that challenged our assumptions about how the galaxy should work. Our response was to try to cage them, to limit their potential so that our position would remain secure." His voice dropped lower. "We were fools. Instead of recognizing what humanity could offer us, we tried to take it by force. We earned the defeat we suffered." Murmurs ran through the chamber. No one had expected such honesty from the High Chancellor. But today, we have a chance to learn from our mistakes. This treaty represents not just peace between humanity and the Confederation, but a new way of thinking about our place in the galaxy. We are no longer rulers standing above our subjects. We are partners, working together toward goals that benefit all. He turned to face Daniel Wright, who stood at the front of the human delegation. Ambassador Wright, I owe you a personal apology. When we first met, I dismissed you as a representative of a lesser species. I was arrogant and blind. You showed me that true strength lies not in domination, but in the courage to seek understanding. Daniel inclined his head respectfully. Hi, Chancellor. I accept your apology. But more than that, I accept your partnership. Let us build something together that our children's children will be proud of. Vortex reached out one of his clawed limbs. Daniel took it without hesitation. The chamber erupted in applause. 1 year later, Catherine Cole stood on the observation deck of a joint Human Confederation patrol vessel. She was no longer just an admiral, but Earth's permanent military representative to the new Galactic Defense Council. The ship cruised through a sector of space that had once been considered dangerous, filled with pirates and smugglers who preyed on weaker vessels. Now it was peaceful, protected by mixed fleets that answered to no single species. Daniel Wright joined her at the viewport. He had aged in the last year, the stress of endless negotiations showing in new lines on his face. But his eyes still held the same hope they always had. A full year of peace, he said. Some people thought it wouldn't last a month. Are you surprised? Daniel considered the question. Not really. I always believed that most beings, regardless of species, want the same basic things: safety, prosperity, chance to build something meaningful. When you give them the opportunity to achieve those things through cooperation rather than conflict, most will take it. Catherine looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were growing alongside settlements from dozens of other species. Trade routes carried goods and ideas between worlds that had never communicated before. Scientists from ancient civilizations worked beside researchers who had barely been in space for 2 centuries. We changed everything, she said quietly. The whole galaxy is different now because we refused to accept the box they tried to put us in. We showed them another way, Daniel agreed. That's all we ever wanted to do. A communication signal chimed. New Geneva was calling with updates on the latest infrastructure projects. Somewhere else, a Diluvian science team wanted to share their findings on fold space optimization. Life in the new galaxy was busy, complicated, and full of challenges. But they were good challenges. Building challenges rather than destroying ones. Catherine turned away from the viewport. There was work to do, a future to build, she said as they walked toward the bridge. When I was young, I dreamed about exploring the stars. I imagined meeting aliens and having adventures. I never imagined it would look like this. Daniel smiled. Better or worse than you expected? Catherine thought about everything they had been through. The fear before the first negotiations, the weight of responsibility during the battle, the long months of careful diplomacy afterward. Different, she said finally. Harder, but more meaningful. They reached the bridge. Officers from 5 different species worked together at their stations, their differences set aside in service of something greater than any single world. Daniel Wright looked at them and felt something warm in his chest. Pride, perhaps, or hope, or simply the satisfaction of knowing that the work had been worth it. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had not conquered it or destroyed it. They had simply refused to accept a place that was beneath them, and in doing so, they had made it better for everyone. Outside the viewport, the stars burned on forever, full of possibility.